1962, the year John Glenn orbited Earth, Marilyn Monroe passed away, and the Cuban Missile Crisis brought us to the brink. But while the world teetered on edge, music gave us something to hold on to. Let's explore the songs that define that pivotal year. Dion DiMucci's The Wanderer represented a significant departure from his earlier work with the Belmonts. Born in the Bronx in 1939, Dion grew up in a neighborhood where street credentials mattered, and his music reflected that reality. The son of a vaudeville performer, he developed his musical chops singing on street corners and subways. What the clean-cut image on the album covers concealed was Dion's severe heroin addiction, which began at age 14 and nearly killed him multiple times during this period. This tension between his public persona and private struggles informed the devil-may-care attitude that made The Wanderer so compelling. The song itself came from a dark place. Dion later admitted it was essentially an autobiographical account of his self-destructive behavior. Dion's journey after The Wanderer followed an unexpected path. Following a near-fatal overdose, he achieved sobriety in 1968 and experienced a profound spiritual awakening, eventually exploring folk music and Christian recordings. Few artists have reinvented themselves so completely. In recent years, Dion has returned to his blues roots, collaborating with artists like Bruce Springsteen, Paul Simon, and Van Morrison on his 2020 album Blues with Friends. At 84, he remains active in music, proving that wanderers sometimes do settle into a remarkable longevity that few of his contemporaries achieved. His brutally honest 1988 autobiography, The Wanderer, Dion's Story, shocked fans with its raw accounts of addiction and recovery. The recording of The Wanderer contains a musical error that became one of its most distinctive features. During the session, the pianist hit a wrong note during the intro, creating a dissonant sound. Rather than re-record, Dion insisted they keep it, claiming it added character. He was right. That mistake helped to create the song's rebellious feel and became one of its signature elements. The song was actually recorded as a B-side to The Majestic, a ballad that Dion's label, Laurie Records, believed would be a hit. When DJs began flipping the record and playing The Wanderer instead, it created tension between Dion and his management, who initially tried to suppress the song's popularity to promote their chosen A-side. Duke of Earl by Gene Chandler emerged from Chicago's vibrant doo-wop scene and represented a pivotal moment in soul music history. Born Eugene Dixon in 1937, Chandler served in the Army before joining the Duke's vocal group. The story behind his stage name reveals the calculated nature of the music business. When Duke of Earl was poised for release, record executives decided it would sell better as a solo release. They created the Gene Chandler persona overnight, naming him after their two favorite actors, Gene Kelly and Jeff Chandler. This forced rebranding separated Chandler from his group and created lasting tensions that remained unresolved for decades. When VJ Records decided to credit only Chandler, the other members received neither recognition nor significant royalties from what would become a million-selling record. After his #1 hit, Chandler demonstrated remarkable adaptability across musical eras. Unlike many of his contemporaries who faded as musical taste changed, he successfully transitioned through doo-wop, soul, and disco, scoring hits in 3 different decades. His business acumen proved equally impressive. He established his own record label and production company, unusual for a black artist in that era, when the industry routinely exploited performers. Though less visible today, Chandler continues to perform occasionally and advocates for artists' rights, having personally experienced the industry's unfair practices. His 1970 hit Groovy Situation demonstrated his ability to evolve musically, reaching number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100, a remarkable achievement for an artist initially labeled as a one-hit wonder from an earlier era. The distinctive Duke, Duke, Duke opening of the song originated from a warm-up exercise the group used before performances. During a rehearsal break, Chandler began improvising a vocal bass line while walking through a corridor with unique acoustics. The group joined in, developing the song's structure in less than an hour. This spontaneous creation went on to sell over 1 million copies and became one of the most recognizable vocal introductions in music history. The recording itself was remarkably low budget, with the entire session costing just $400, approximately $3,800 in today's money. Chandler's elaborate stage performances for the song included wearing a cape, crown, and carrying a scepter, a theatrical element he developed after seeing audience reactions to early performances. This regal costume became so closely associated with him that he continued wearing it at appearances decades later. If you remember dancing to these tracks at your high school gym or first heard them crackling through your car radio, share those memories in the comments below. Hit that like button. Subscribe to our channel for more musical journeys through time, and share this video with friends who will appreciate this trip down memory lane. Your stories are part of this musical history too. Hey Baby by Bruce Chanel created a sound that would influence generations to come. Chanel, born in 1940 in Jacksonville, Texas, wasn't supposed to be a one-hit wonder. He'd been performing since his teenage years, building a following in the Louisiana and Texas club circuits. What many don't know is that Chanel had actually written Hey Baby in 1959, but it took 3 years for the record companies to take a chance on it, a decision that reveals how the music industry's gatekeepers nearly prevented one of the decade's most influential songs from reaching our ears. Chanel had been rejected by nearly every major label, with executives claiming the song was too country for pop radio and too pop for country stations. After his meteoric rise, Chanel's career took an unexpected turn. While touring in England, a young musician named John Lennon approached him backstage, fascinated by the harmonica sound on Hey Baby. Chanel's harmonica player, Delbert McClinton, gave Lennon impromptu lessons that would later influence the harmonica sound on early Beatles tracks like Love Me Do. Despite this connection to rock royalty, Chanel struggled to replicate his initial success in America. He eventually moved to Nashville and found greater recognition as a songwriter, penning hits for other artists including Janie Fricke and T.G. Shepherd. Throughout the late 1960s and 1970s, he continued recording, releasing singles that received critical praise but minimal commercial success. Here's something few people realize about Hey Baby. The iconic harmonica riff almost never happened. McClinton had arrived at the recording session with a severe cold and initially couldn't play. After multiple failed takes and against the producer's wishes, he attempted one final recording while feverish, creating the distinctive raw harmonica sound that made the song instantly recognizable. That improvised, almost canceled performance created the hook that would sell over 1 million copies and reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The studio itself contributed to the song's unique sound. Recorded at Fort Worth's Summit Sound Studios, the building's unusual acoustics, it was formerly a movie theater, created natural reverb that engineers today try to recreate digitally. Sherry by the Four Seasons represented a breakthrough moment in popular music, introducing falsetto as a dominant vocal style. The group formed in 1960 in Newark, New Jersey, and took their name from a bowling alley where they were rejected for a gig, a classic example of turning failure into motivation. What separated them from other groups was Frankie Valli's extraordinary vocal range, but their public image concealed darker realities. Most band members had criminal records and connections to organized crime figures in New Jersey. Tommy DeVito, a founding member, had served prison time, while Valli himself grew up in a tough neighborhood dominated by mob influence. These rough beginnings directly contradicted their polished image their record company carefully constructed. The group had struggled for nearly a decade under various names before their breakthrough, recording unsuccessful singles as The Four Lovers, The Variatones, and Frankie Tyler and the Four Lovers. The group's journey following Sherry included extraordinary success and bitter conflict. They produced 29 top 40 hits and sold over 100 million records worldwide, but internal tensions eventually tore them apart. Their story of rise, fall, and redemption became the basis for the Tony Award-winning musical Jersey Boys in 2005, introducing their music to new generations. Valli, now 90, continued performing until recently, his falsetto remaining remarkably intact despite his advanced age. The group's influence extends to countless artists who adopted their vocal techniques, from the Beach Boys to modern performers like Bruno Mars. Green Onions by Booker T and the MGs broke racial barriers while defining the sound of Memphis soul. Formed in 1962 in Memphis, Tennessee, the group served as the house band for Stax Records and represented something revolutionary: a racially integrated group in a deeply segregated South. Organist Booker T. Jones, guitarist Steve Cropper, bassist Louis Steinberg, later replaced by Donald Duck Dunn, and drummer Al Jackson Jr. created a new musical language together. While the music industry highlighted their groundbreaking integration, they faced genuine danger. Traveling through southern states, they often couldn't eat in the same restaurants or stay in the same hotels, and occasionally faced threats of violence for defying racial conventions. Jones, remarkably, was just 17 when he recorded the track, taking time off from high school to create what would become a defining instrumental of the decade. The group's influence extended far beyond Green Onions. As Stax Records' house band, they played on hundreds of recordings for artists like Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, and Sam and Dave, essentially creating the Memphis soul sound. Their tight, economical playing style emphasized the spaces between notes as much as the notes themselves. Tragically, drummer Al Jackson Jr. was murdered in 1975 during a home invasion, effectively ending the group's classic period. Jones continued his musical journey, producing artists like Bill Withers and Willie Nelson, while remaining an elder statesman of soul. In 2007, the surviving members reunited for the film Soul Men and continue to receive recognition for their pioneering contributions to American music. Their rhythmic innovations permanently altered popular music's landscape. The Stax sound they created emphasized the backbeat, the second and fourth beats of each measure, creating a distinctive groove that contrasted sharply with the smoother Motown productions from Detroit. Green Onions originated from a recording session accident. The group was waiting for a scheduled singer who never showed up, leaving studio time that would otherwise be wasted. To fill the gap, they began jamming on a blues progression Jones had been practicing. Jim Stewart, Stax's founder, was so impressed he recorded it. The song's unusual title came after a band member called it funky, which was slang for odorous or smelly. This prompted someone to suggest naming it after the smelliest thing they could think of: Green Onions. This improvised instrumental, created to fill empty studio time and named as a joke, reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became one of the most recognizable instrumental tracks in history. These songs from 1962 weren't just hits. They were cultural milestones that shaped music for decades. Share your memories, hit subscribe, and join us next time for another musical journey through the soundtrack of our lives.